Let's start today's story after the Empire Strikes Back. Vader had only recently learned that he had a son, hidden from him for the last 2 decades. After his mission to Cloud City where he chops Luke's hand off, he travelled back to Mustafar. Vader marched straight to his bacta tank, his emotions running rampant. He was disgusted with himself. He recalled back to the moment that Luke fell from the platform to the skies below. He remembers his mind drifting to what once was Padmé. He remembered her image, her smell, her aura. As Anakin's armor was lifted off his body, he fell into a deep slumber inside the bacta. His mind was hit with flashes as he transformed into the past. For the first time in 2 decades, he allowed himself to remember her. Memories of when they met, fell in love, got married, all of the goodness and happy emotions flooded him like a tsunami. But the pain also crept in, like a shadow trying to escape the sunlight. Vader's eyes snapped open, tears falling down his cheeks. A few weeks later, Vader would encounter Padmé's old handmaiden Sabe, who looked almost identical to her. She was a part of a cult called the Amidalians, who aimed to keep the memory of Padmé alive. Upon meeting Sabe, Vader knew that he had to do everything in his power to bring Padmé back. He travels to Umbara, where he knows he will find someone from his past. He locates Kumanai, an old cloner from Kamino who worked on many things, including the clone army and the creation of Starkiller, though he was a failed project in the end. The Dark Lord had decided that cloning her was the most effective way of bringing her back. He'd seen firsthand how successful and incredible the Kaminoans were at creating life, and he knew they would discover a way to clone Padmé, whilst retaining all of her memories and knowledge. They travelled to Mount Tantus, an old abandoned facility which used to be home to a cloning project meant for Emperor Palpatine. It had been destroyed, and together, Vader and Nye would restore it with the help of stormtroopers. As the restoration process began, Vader put in place various safeguards to ensure that Palpatine would never find out. If the Emperor received even a whiff of knowledge about Vader attempting to resurrect his past, he would be executed. Even now, after 20 years of being his apprentice, the Dark Lord knew that he was no match against Palpatine. He had tried a few times over the years to kill him and take control over the Empire, but all of the times he was beaten into submission and tossed back into obedience. While Tantus gets built, Kumanai begins her experiments. Luckily for Vader, she wasn't starting from scratch. Her past experience gave her a strong base to begin with. She knew that in order to clone someone from the dead, it was essential to have objects that were tied to them. Nye would task Vader with retrieving anything he believes will link Padmé's dead spirit to the real world. Vader would leave Tantus and begin his search. He travels back to the Amidalians where he enters with a fury, igniting his red lightsaber and cutting down all of the soldiers firing at him. As he makes his way through, he uses the Force to knock Sabe unconscious and take her. Moving on, he flies to Naboo, traveling to Padmé's grave where he must face the past. He rips the tomb open with the Force to find her mangled bones. Vader's heart clenched, but he settled his emotions. He takes the old necklace he made for her upon their first visit to Coruscant decades earlier. This would bring back her memories. Additionally, he took one of her decaying bones. The bones were the most important. They would allow Kumanai to accurately recreate her image to ensure she looks identical to how she did and use the DNA hidden deep within the bones. Upon returning to Mount Tantus, Vader gave the Kaminoan scientist everything he'd discovered. Over the following weeks, Kumanai would try and fail several times. When Vader's hope was dwindling, he was woken from his sleep from a stormtrooper. Rushing down to the cloning bay, he receives the news that it had been successful. Padme Amidala has been cloned. As he goes to see her, she is simply an infant. Kumanai explains to Vader that her age will increase to 27 within the week of life, the same age as she was when she died. Upon turning 27, the aging process will slow and continue at a normal rate. The Sith Lord asks about her memories. Will she be like the Padme he had lost? The scientist explains that it may take a few weeks for all of her memories to come back to her, but Vader must be patient. The next week, she looked exactly as she did before she died. Beautiful, elegant, and Vader was starstruck. His emotions spiraled. At first, Padme didn't know the man who was in front of her, but Anakin would slowly reveal the information. He believed in order to ensure a smooth transition for Padme, they should go back to places of significance. Anakin would take her to where she was born on Naboo, ensuring she wore a hood at all times to conceal her identity. They couldn't have anyone recognizing the old senator from Naboo, who supposedly died 20 years earlier. The Amidala palace was still intact, and as they marched past it, she recalled her childhood. She spoke to Vader like he was an old school teacher, telling him the stories of how she and her sister Sola would fight on the playground or turn each other's hair into fancy braids. Growing up, Padme attended many formal events, giving her the courage and ability to become queen when she was only 13 years old, though out of her recollection was the fact that Palpatine had coerced these events to put her in office. She was ahead of her time. From here, Vader took her to Coruscant, and although the atmosphere of this place was entirely different to when she lived there, seeing familiar buildings such as the Jedi Temple or the Senate Chamber gave her the possibility to remember. Padme's memories were coming back, though she didn't know who Vader was, and that she used to be in love with Anakin. That would come back. They traveled to Tatooine, various places of significance throughout the Clone Wars, and the final kicker, the Lake House of Naboo where they got married. For weeks on end they traveled. She could now tell stories of her and Anakin and their incredible adventures together. However, everything changed when Vader took her to Mustafar to see his castle. Upon entering the system, Padme knew something was wrong. Entering his castle, the lava planet spoke to her, and her final memories were complete. She recalled exiting her ship and running to Anakin, hugging him. Fear consumed her as she watched the man she loved turn to the dark side right before her eyes. He had killed younglings, and now he was prepared to throw away their love in the pursuit of power. As Padme thought she had reached rock bottom, Anakin chokes her to the floor and he becomes Darth Vader. She stares at the man in front of her. It all made sense now. He is Anakin Skywalker, her husband. They get into a screaming match as Padme tries to escape. This wasn't the man she once loved. Vader would be able to calm her and regain her compliance. Padme questions Vader about his choices and the path he has taken. Vader would defend his position, explaining that the Jedi turned against him, and after Padme died, he had nothing. Padme held too much influence over Anakin, and over time, she would begin to remind him of the ideals they once shared and the love that bound them together. The thing that hurt the most for Padme was that she could see her old husband beyond the facade of Vader. As Vader explained his life, Padme grew sympathetic towards him, hearing of all the pain and loss, and how there was quite literally nobody over the last 20 years who cared for him. He was broken. His course of action is what you would expect for someone who had nothing. She knew that she could bring him back, to restore the man she once loved. As she was taken to her quarters on Mustafar, she was hit with another memory. She thought she remembered everything, but this was the final piece to the puzzle. She was in Polis Massa, where she gave birth to twins named Luke and Leia. Despite her love for Anakin, Padme cannot ignore the atrocities committed by the Empire. At heart, Padme is compassionate and wants the best for people. This is the opposite of what the Empire stands for. Because of this, she knows she has to help defeat the Empire as best as she can, whilst ensuring that Anakin returns to her. Over her time reintegrating into life, she learns about the current state of the galaxy. The Empire is oppressive and deadly. They are the tyrants of the galaxy. At first, she believed the best way she could help was to re-enter the Senate and fight for change. The same thing she had attempted to do in the Clone Wars, but she was horrified to learn that the Senate had been disbanded and the only ruling authority was Emperor Palpatine. She knew that she'd have to reach the rebellion and assist them as best as she possibly could. From discussions with Anakin, she knew that Luke was in the rebellion and training to become a Jedi, which disgusted Vader as his son stood for the very thing that turned him into the dark side. When Vader is on missions for Palpatine, which can sometimes go on for months, Padme secretly contacts the rebellion. She spent her time learning who was alive from her past. She was extremely upset to learn of Bail's recent death, But when she found Mon Mothma, she believed her old friend could help her. Reaching out to the old senator, Padme organizes a secret meeting with her. At first, Padme didn't tell Mothma who she was. Even in the world of Star Wars, it was absurd to believe that someone could return from the grave. When Mothma laid eyes upon her old friend, she dropped to the floor and began to cry. She didn't understand what had happened. In order to keep the identity of Vader hidden, she would have to be strategic about what information is revealed. Padme explains that she has been kept captive by the Emperor for the last 20 years, and Palpatine had spread the notion that she had died while setting up a fake funeral. Mothma would believe it. She knew for a fact that the person in front of her was her old friend and would never have even thought to think of cloning. Padme knew she could trust Mon. She had spent the last 20 years keeping secrets, and she would be able to keep this lie for now. Padme would tell her about Luke, that he is her son and she needs to speak with him, but no one can find out that she is alive. Mothma would agree and set up a meeting between the two. Luke travels to the lake house of Naboo, where Padme organized this meeting. Mothma hadn't told the boy who he was walking into, but he knew that it must have been important. Luke had grown into a powerful Jedi, now 22 years old and wielding a green lightsaber. He had hoped in another life his father would have been proud for him. They speak for hours, and Padme tells Luke absolutely everything that has happened. Unlike Mothma, she spares no detail. She explains the events that happened at the end of the Clone Wars, and how Vader was brought back to her as a clone. Luke found it strange that he was talking to his mother, but not his real physical mother. It was a difficult thing to comprehend. He had such communications with a clone before, Rex, a trusted soldier in the rebellion. In the grand scheme of things, Luke didn't find this too weird. In the space of a few months, he discovered that his father is the most tyrannical and evil man in the galaxy, and that his mother has just been resurrected from death. Luke asks her to come back with him, but she rejects his offer. Padme still believes in Anakin, and she must go back to their father to try and bring him back. Luke understood, but to ensure they could continue to contact, they exchanged communication details. Padme would go back to Vader, where she acts like nothing had happened. This remained their lives for the following months. Padme would speak and spend time with Vader, and at evenings, she would contact Luke, who would keep her in the loop with rebellion activity. Padme felt weird about Vader. She knew she loved him, and she could feel such strong emotions for the man within. But his image meant nothing to her. When she looked at him, she felt empty. No love, no kindness, nothing. But as she closed her eyes and thought of Anakin, the Jedi Knight, father to her children, she recalled their time on the balcony of their apartment on Coruscant. That man she loved, and she would bring him back. Despite Vader's efforts to keep Padme a secret, the Emperor grew suspicious of Vader. For the first time in decades, he noticed the Dark Lord enter prolonged absences and erratic behavior. Vader had lost multiple missions over the recent months, and although Vader would justify it to Palpatine, reports from stormtroopers on the missions detailed Vader showing mercy and compassion for their enemy. Palpatine knew something was up, and he sent spies to monitor Vader. Within days of these spies lurking behind Vader's movements, they discover the secret cloning project, and as they search deeper, uncover the identity of Senator Padme Amidala from Naboo. Palpatine was absolutely furious. How had this gone under the radar? And how had Lord Vader discovered the secrets to bringing somebody back from the dead? He immediately leaves for Mustafar without warning. As he arrives, Vader commands Padme to go and hide. They both knew something was wrong. Vader could sense it, and even though Padme wasn't force sensitive, she could sense the danger that was about to approach. In hiding, she calls Luke and tells him to immediately come to their location. Vader would welcome Padme as he exited his Lambda T4A Imperial shuttle. The Sith Lords would exchange pleasantries, but from the onset, Vader knew that something was wrong. As they always did, the two began by discussing the state of the Empire and the place the Force has within their ranks. Sidious centered the discussion around loyalty. Loyalty is the most important asset to keep an empire together. And when some disregard and throw away loyalty, cracks are revealed in the institution. Vader felt sweat drip down his neck, and he knew where this was going. As Palpatine's tone changed, he would spit on Vader's feet and raise him into the air as he choked him. He exclaimed to his apprentice that he knows about his cloning project, his pet who he has kept hidden. Padme covered her mouth as she heard this. The Emperor believed that now it was time to test his loyalty as he murders Padme. Vader screamed at this allegation, releasing him from his force choke and igniting his lightsaber. There wasn't a chance that Palpatine would kill Padme. Anakin hasn't worked this hard to bring her back, only to lose her again a few months later. Finally, for the first time in years, he was happy. Sidious laughs as Vader raises his blade, allowing the hum to resonate throughout the room. He raises his hands and blasts the Dark Lord with lightning. Vader would block, but he was reminded about the dangers of lightning and the pain it can inflict upon his suit. The clash of red lightsabers illuminated the Mustafar castle as Palpatine and Vader engaged in a ferocious duel, each strike swung with hatred and power. Palpatine's eyes burned with death as he taunted Vader, reminding him of his fall from grace and the countless lives he has destroyed. He was a failure of the Sith, never a worthy apprentice, and only a placeholder until he found someone better. Vader was filled with a mix of rage, but also a sense of sadness. How had he let this tyrannical man torment him for his entire life? The battle raged on. Palpatine's movements were fluid and swift, but Vader's were stiff and unfreeing. Palpatine eventually sliced through Vader's guard, sending him crashing to the floor, defenseless and at his mercy. Vader had lost, and Sidious celebrated his victory by blasting the Dark Lord with lightning. It seared under his skin, destroying the circuits of his suit and slowly killing the man. Vader writhed in agony, his mechanical limbs twitching under the heat, while Palpatine's disdainful expression exemplified his disappointment. The lightning intensified, each bolt showing how little Vader had become in Palpatine's eyes. After 2 decades of service, Palpatine finally decided he didn't need him anymore. He was better off without Vader as his apprentice. Palpatine announces Vader's death as he raises the saber above his head. Before he strikes, he ensures Vader knows that Padme is next in his long line of murderous intentions. He mentions his son Luke, how he will die to his blade, but just as the Jedi's name left his lips, Skywalker appeared and threw his lightsaber towards Palpatine, momentarily distracting him and giving Vader enough time to return to his feet. They were both shocked by how he was here, but Vader didn't complain. His son had saved him. As he chose his side beside his son, Padme appeared at the back, the first glimpse of their real family. Padme assured Vader that it's okay, their son is here to help. Sidious had enough and leaped forward, unleashing a storm of force lightning and pushing them to their limits. With each clash of their lightsabers, Luke and Vader recognized each other's movements. The battle was fierce and exhausting, with Palpatine's crackles echoing through the castle as he attempted to exploit their weaknesses. Slowly, their combined resolve began to turn the tide, with Luke's agility and Vader's brute strength complementing each other perfectly. As Sidious struggled to keep up with the Skywalkers' combined might, their lightsabers sliced through Palpatine's defenses, ending his reign of terror and killing him. It was over, they had won, and the Skywalkers were reunited. Anakin Skywalker was now redeemed, and he shared a hug with Padme and Luke. Although the Empire wasn't completely destroyed, with Vader and Palpatine's defeat, it would be an assured loss for the dark side. Padme, Anakin, and Luke, along with the rebellion, begin the process of rebuilding the Republic. Everything had worked out in the end. As the three stood together, Padme revealed one last piece of information. Before she died 2 decades earlier, she hadn't given birth to just one child, but instead, twins, another named Leia. Luke's heart dropped as everything clicked into place. Leia Organa is his twin sister. The following months would see the family united, and together they joined as they attempted to rebuild their broken love after years of hardship and pain. Anakin would have to atone for his crimes, but by the influence of Luke and Leia, Vader was only banished from the New Republic, allowing he and Padme to go and rebuild their lives together. They traveled to the Outer Rim, where they remained alone in the mountains. For the first time in what seemed like a generation, there was peace, and Luke and Leia would take active roles in the New Republic, with Leia becoming Supreme Chancellor and Luke beginning the daunting task of rebuilding the Jedi Order. Although he would ask his father for advice, the once Jedi Knight had left that life behind long ago. Now he desired to live in peace with Padme. Cloning her was the right decision, and it allowed the pathway back to peace and reconciliation, where the Chosen One fulfilled the prophecy with his son's help. If you enjoyed today's video, you must watch What If Vader Spoke to Padme's Force Ghost, and What If Anakin and Vader Were Different People. Please check out our membership page if you would like to support the channel, it really helps us out. Thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with you.